Welcome back to Ron's Radio Corner. And what we have in front of us here is the Seancheer S-799. This is a radio that I honestly thought I had already done a review of, and went searching through the videos to see what I had said about it, because I have another radio, which is really sort of a no-name thing that was given to me by my cousin. The model of it is an HB-R29. There it is there. And I was going to do a video on this radio today, but there's such a natural comparison between these two radios, just because they're both roughly the same size, and they're small. Hold on one second. Okay, when I say small, I mean showing off the high production cost of my YouTube video here. I'm trying to do that with one hand, but they're small radios. I mean, compared to what I would think of as a portable sort of pocket radio, which would be this guy here, which I can't even quite fit in the frame. I have to lie it down, something like that. There we go. Just to give you an idea of the size difference. I mean, these are small radios. They're definitely pocket radios. I mean, you could put this in your shirt pocket without any problem whatsoever. Let me get some of this junk out of the way here. Put this back someplace where I'm not going to lose it. So I was going to do a video on this. Wanted to see what I had said about this, only to find out that I never did a video on that one either. So I thought maybe I'll just do a video on the two of them. So the interesting thing is the Seancheer, I'm not sure how you pronounce that, is a radio that I got off of Amazon. And at the time I got it, I think it was $7.99, $8.99. And I wasn't paying attention. I didn't look at the dimensions of the radio, and I expected it to be much more the size of a pocket radio, something along the size, well, I guess it is the size of a pocket radio, but I thought it would be something along the size of the XH Data D219. It has that same layout where it's on it, it's not standing vertically, it's horizontal. And it looked, it looked solidly built in the pictures. I thought maybe it'd be something similar to, the feel of maybe something of a Sony radio. I didn't really expect it to be like a Sony radio, but that's sort of what hit me. When it came in and I saw how small it was, I was flabbergasted. I was, truthfully, I was a little disappointed. And if I gave you my final thoughts on this, which I'm sure I'll recap at the end of this, I just don't know, other than maybe wanting to have a radio that's really, really small that you can slip into your shirt pocket, or store someplace with the most minimal amount of room. I'm not really sure why you would want a radio this small. It's tiny. And I say that I have a radio that I haven't done a review of that's smaller than this, but it's a radio that does, you can, I think, put a TF card in it and load it up with music, and, so it's a little bit more of an MP3 player / radio, and I got it with the idea of it'd be nice to have something like that if I felt like going for a walk or something and wanted something small to kind of keep in my sweatshirt pocket, in the fall or something like that. But so small radio, small dial. It is fairly, it feels fairly well built. It doesn't feel cheap or flimsy. Uses 2 AA batteries, which I've just got whatever I had lying around in there, but two AA batteries. It's got obviously an FM mast. This swings up and it extends, but you can't swivel it in any other direction. Performance-wise, and I'll pop it on here.
Order online. Go to next day.
Let me.
The end of World War II, they joined China's President Xi Jinping in Beijing to observe a large military parade. Yesterday, Xi signed an agreement that calls for Moscow to build a pipeline to send Russian gas through Siberia into China.
And
NPR's Charles Maines has more.
I'm not sure what that sounds like, on the video. It's slightly tinny. It's not, it's not a nice full sound. Again, it's a very inexpensive radio, and it's very small. So, I mean, I'm not sure what you could expect, with that combination. But it sounds decent, particularly if you're listening to talk radio like this. And for music, I mean, I can't imagine anybody buying this radio because they want to. It's not 1960 where you're hiding the radio under your pillow or something like that. But you know what I mean? For occasional music listening, if you just maybe something to take to the beach or something like that, maybe this works okay. As far as its sensitivity here, I'll just turn it off. I like to see what they can pull in with the antenna down, because I've said in another video, I really hate using the antenna. Probably because as a kid, I probably snapped off the antenna on more than one radio by being a little careless, or, I mean, they're fragile. Antennas are fragile, and they're easy to break if you're not being careful. So for me, a big thing with the radio is how good is the reception without the antenna. And I can get probably about a half dozen FM channels, those that are local to me. If I put the antenna up, I was getting maybe close to 3 times that. Yeah, I'm trying to think if that's fair. I probably got about a half dozen or so, maybe 8, and I probably got about 20, 25 with the antenna up. AM, I got about 6 channels on this. Now, I didn't do a lot of playing around. I didn't go look if I could get better reception near the window or in someplace else. I mean, I just sat here and I got about 6 channels. In comparison, we've got, the HBR 29 here. I have no idea where this radio came from. My cousin gave this to me, and it was something he found in a box of his mother's stuff. Let me do my best to tune something here. That volume is way up. So, comparing this radio to the Seancheer, I find that it's a little tinier, and unfortunately, that's not tuned in really well, so it's a little... having a tough time. Let me. So I had to do a quick pause.
And charge big. We're Mega Oil.
And we're Dupuy Oil. Great prices, great customer service, and a full menu of care for our friends from Woonsocket to Western.
And honestly, I mean, it just sounds a little tinnier than the Seancheer behind it. Neither one of them are great to tune. This is sort of the downfall of a tiny little radio with a tiny little display. That you feel like, I felt like I had to use my fingernail on the little notches on the, the dial to just slightly adjust the dial. They are a little trickier to tune in because of their size. I found that this wasn't as selective on FM. Close, but there were some stations, a couple of stations that I got with the Seancheer that I couldn't get with this. Not that I spent a lot of time trying. If I got a half dozen or so on FM without the antenna, the Seancheer on this, I probably just got just under that. And then with the antenna, I thought the performance was where I think maybe I might have gotten 3 times the stations. I think maybe I got about twice as many stations with this. AM, I got 4 stations versus 6 with that one. What else can I say about it? They're really, really small radios. So you kind of walk through them pretty quick. I wonder if this was something that, you got as a free gift or something. I looked on, Google, see if I can find anything about this radio. And the only thing I came up with was an eBay listing for this radio for like $15 used, plus whatever the shipping is. This radio is not worth $15. I mean, I'm not sure if I think either one of these radios are worth the $799 or so that I paid for this. But this radio particularly, it feels cheaper. This is like a $5 or less deal all day long. They both come with the little lanyard strap. I think I put this one on when I got it, and this one I think is just, comes installed. The dial on this radio is oriented opposite than what we would see normally in the U.S., which I have a few radios like that now. I really hate that. That's just me, but it's probably not just me, but so other parts of the world, this is the norm, and I'm sure if you get one that's oriented like we have it here, you're aggravated. I guess it's sort of like going to England and driving on the wrong side of the road. They both have a power light. A tuning light would be really nice. I mean, they're small radios and budgety, but they're so tough to tune anyway. It would be really great to have that tuning light. They both use 2 AA's. I didn't pop the cover off of this one, but that's what this one uses as well. This has a similar antenna to the other one where it just swings up, but you can't pivot it like 180 or 360 or anything like that. They both have a headphone jack on this radio. The headphone jack is here on the left of the radio. On the Seancheer, it's right on top. On this radio, you also have the switch for off FM and AM. And then on the side, you have the tuning and the volume, where on this radio, you have the switch in the front for FM, AM. The tuning dial is in a similar spot, but that bottom knob is not just the volume, it's also the on and off switch, which is kind of normal. You see that on lots of radios. Because, I've wondered, I'm not a big guy to kind of say, oh, let me grab headphones and see what headphones sound like, but Weather's fairly nice today, and I have windows open, but there's a lot of traffic going by, so I apologize. There was a truck that was a little loud. But because these have such tiny little speakers and they're so small, I could see where someone might use these, probably with like earbuds. But I grabbed my Sony headphones here, and I plugged them into. I said my Sony headphones here, and you can't even see them. So, you know, fairly nice headphones. You know, just kind of the over-the-ear job. I plugged them into both radios. Interestingly, I expected. I mean, I think this sounds a little tinnier, but I expected on the headphones both of them to sound relatively similar because they sound relatively similar. What I found was with the headphones plugged in, this still sounded tinny. I think it's just set or optimized or tuned or something. Um, you know, for some of those higher tones. This actually had a much mellower, maybe slightly flat, but much mellower, fuller sound. So on headphones, you know, the Seancheer became a much more pleasant radio to listen to. So here we are, 16 minutes in, and we're talking about these two radios. There's really not much more to talk about. They're both AM/FM, really small pocket radios that run on 2 AA batteries. The sensitivity on them is good for all the locals. I'm not sure you would expect much more than that. I'm not sure what the place of this radio is, other than, or either one of these radios, other than the type of radio you keep in a drawer in case there's an emergency and you need to have a radio handy, which I'm a big fan of. I've talked about that before. To me, the best emergency radio is one that you know where it is and maybe that you use. I can't see using this all that often, but I could see this being small enough to kind of stuff in a junk drawer or something. The problem I have with, I mean, I don't know where this guy came from, and good luck finding him. I certainly wouldn't spend $15 on eBay for it. The problem I have with this at $7.99 or $8.99, feels well made. I mean, it really feels nicely solid and well made. Doesn't sound bad for the size. But the problem I have is I got this radio. Let me adjust this camera up a little bit so I'm not constantly. I got this radio. This is the Benz, and I'm not sure if you could. You'd have to go see if this is still available on Amazon. But this radio was like $5. There was a coupon, but this radio was like $5. Is it a perfect radio? No. It's there's a little bit of case vibration from the speaker that makes listening to certain things slightly annoying. Sounds great with headphones. It's got really good sensitivity. I did a review, some sort of showdown between a few pocket radios, and fully expected that this was not going to be the best performer of the bunch, but it was by far the best performer of the bunch. It really did a great job. So I don't know why you would buy this, unless you specifically needed a radio this small, when for about the same money you can buy this. And if you couldn't find this, there are a few other radios out there that consistently seem to be in that $9.99, $10 or less range, right? I think Prunus has a radio that seems to float around that price. I did a review of a JASM radio that actually works pretty well. That was around that sort of price. The XH Data D219, and I think the D220 will occasionally float around that $9 or so price. The Seancheer S-799 is a nice little radio. It's cute. It seems well made. The performance is okay. You don't expect great sound from a radio this size, and its selectivity is decent, not extraordinary. But for the same amount of money, you could get something like this, or any of those other radios I just mentioned. And unless you really, really had a need for a tiny little radio, you know, this is too big for your drawer. Heck, you can't even say it's not portable enough because you can clip this on a belt. But you wanted, if you're a lady and you wanted a radio to keep in your pocket, you needed a really small radio to fit into a beach bag, and this wouldn't fit. Maybe this is a decent radio to grab, but otherwise, I would spend a few extra bucks and get yourself a better radio. Thanks for watching.